This isn't your average story about an ordinary girl. No, this girl was different. She had something strange, something almost supernatural about her. She lived in a tiny, poor village in a kingdom in England back in the 1600s. But this isn't just a story about her life, it's about the mystery that followed her. Even long after her death, the kingdom was ruled by a cruel and greedy king. He would squeeze every last penny out of his people, using fear and violence to collect taxes. But there was one village he couldn't control, the village where this girl lived. Why? Because she had a gift. Some say she could see the future. Others say her intuition was just unnaturally sharp. Whatever it was, she always knew when the king's soldiers were coming. She'd warn the villagers, and they'd be ready to fight back. Time after time, the king's attacks failed. The king wasn't happy. He called his advisors together, and they all agreed the girl had to go. She was too dangerous to let live. So he sent an assassin to kill her. The girl sensed the danger. She told her neighbors, begged them to help her. But no one did, and just like that, the assassin struck. The girl was gone. They buried her coffin in a nearby forest, thinking that was the end of it. But oh, they were wrong. This was only the beginning. A few days after her burial, something strange happened. The ground around her grave was scorched, the grass burned to ash in a perfect circle. People were terrified, but not entirely surprised. After all, they'd always known she wasn't normal. No one dared to go near that spot again. Years turned into decades, and the girl's story became a legend. 100 years later, in the 1700s, 3 journalists from London heard the tale. They were skeptical, of course, but also curious. They decided to dig up her coffin and see for themselves what secrets it held. When they opened the grave, they found her coffin still intact. But what really sent chills down their spines was the inscription carved into it. Written in Hebrew, "Do not touch," ignoring the warning. They took the coffin back to the city. One of the journalists kept it in his home. A week later, he was dead. The coffin passed to the second journalist. He died too. Then the third. All 3 of them gone, each from some mysterious, unexplainable illness. People started to whisper the coffin was cursed. No one wanted to go near it. The local authorities decided to lock it away in a museum, hoping that would contain whatever evil was inside. But then one night the museum caught fire. The entire building burned to the ground except for the coffin. It sat there untouched, in the middle of the ashes. After that, the authorities sealed off the museum and abandoned the area. The coffin was left where it was, and for nearly a century, no one dared to disturb it. Then came the 1900s. Science and technology were advancing, and people were starting to dismiss the supernatural as mere superstition. The United States, curious about the coffin's strange history, asked the British government to send it over for study. The British agreed. The coffin was loaded onto a ship, a massive and sinkable ship called the RMS Titanic. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic set sail from Southampton, England, headed for New York. You probably know what happened next. For days into its voyage, the Titanic struck an iceberg and sank. Over 1,500 people lost their lives in one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history. But here's the thing. Some people believe the Titanic's sinking wasn't just an accident. They say it was a coffin, the cursed coffin of that girl from the 1600s. They say her power, or curse, was still at work, even centuries after her death. So was it just a tragic coincidence? Or was there something truly supernatural at play? That's for you to decide. But one thing's for sure, some mysteries are better left buried.